Welcome back to the channel. Thank you guys for hanging with me for another video. I really appreciate you going out of your way to like, comment, and subscribe. That helps me and the channel out a lot. So thank you guys for doing that. Now let's talk about targeting big fish as we get into the summer months, because it seems like earlier in the year, you're more so fishing for bites. You know, the water's cold, there's big fish up everywhere where you're fishing, and it just seems like if you can get 8 or 9 bites a day, that's enough and the big fish will be there. Later in the year, it seems like you really need to start targeting big fish. Now, by necessity, earlier in the year, they're there. Later in the year, they're not always going to be everywhere you fish, and when they are, they're really focused in on what they're feeding on. So, very important to pay attention to the gizzard shad. Any type of big forage you have in your lake, that's what I really try to look for once we get May and beyond. Anywhere that I'm fishing, I want to be seeing big bluegill and big gizzard shad, and gizzard shad preferably. So what do I do when I get in an area, I know there's been some gizzard shad hanging around, and I start seeing them flicker on the top of the water? And this is not something you can miss. This is a pretty big disturbance on the top of the water. It's very unique. There's really nothing else, you know, a bluegill or any threadfin shad or something like that is not going to make this. This is a gizzard shad coming up to the top, and it's just like a and they're swimming along. So when you do see that, you could be out, fishing on a ledge in 20, 15 feet of water, or you may be in 3 feet of water, around a bunch of lily pads. But when you start seeing that, big bass in that area typically are following those big gizzard shad. That's why big bass are going to be in the area that you're in right now, because of the gizzard shad. So very important to have something rigged up to where you can make a quick change, set the rod down you're using, pick up a rod that has a gizzard shad imitator on it, and throw it out. And so the important thing for this technique, you want something moving fast. So all my baits that I have are something that I can fish through the water real quickly, get it to where I think that fish is at, or get it right in that vicinity of where that gizzard shad is at, and hopefully there's a big bass within, a few feet of that fish. So here's my number one. I've caught the most fish on this on times where I've seen gizzard shad, is a super spook. Now this is a clear one, chrome and blue, bone, really any of them work, and it's not big time condition type thing. It's you just pick this bait up and fire it towards where you just saw that gizzard shad, make about 5-10 casts around, then you can set it down and go back to what you're doing. But gizzard shad, best imitator in my opinion. That gizzard shad's on top of the water, that's why you saw it. So you're giving them the most natural thing. Now, that's not always going to be the scenario. A lot of times you will just start seeing a lot of gizzard shad. Maybe you're seeing some bass coming in and out of the grass, or maybe they're just swimming around wood and stuff. You need something a little bit more weedless. I like throwing this big hair jig chatterbait. Now this is made by Hog Farmer, and if I'm out, I'm fishing around, some cover, most of the time it's going to be some type of grass. I know I'm not going to necessarily be able to reel a lot of other baits through this. So this is great when you just need something, fire it out there. This is one of the best gizzard shad imitators, is a big hair jig. So I throw this out there, wind it back, but typically within a couple turns of the handle on your reel, they're going to have it. And a lot of times you will see a bass like porpoising out of the water chasing gizzard shad. That hair jig is perfect for that. If you put that in the vicinity of where you saw that bass, and again, this is another one of those where you can reel it real fast, keep it moving quick, fire it back out there. Very important. Now the last one is a big swim bait on a jig head. And I like the jig head because you can move it quickly. If you just put this on a belly weighted, keel weighted hook, then it doesn't, that's for reeling it real slow. This is, fire it out, it's going to sink down. You can wind it. You can basically fish it the same way you would fish a smaller swim bait for schooling fish. So this is just the same way. You're just throwing it out. You see a bass or you see a gizzard shad, and you can put this in front of them. And then it's realistic, because the gizzard shad, they're in distress. So they're moving quickly. You can do that with this. So I really think the jig head on the swim bait, 1/2 ounce, is my favorite size for this. perfect for this scenario, because if you have that just a slower moving swim bait, I just don't think you can get it in front of the fish and make it look real like you can with the jig head. So those are very important. And this is not a way you're going to catch a bunch of fish or catch a limit, but this is a great way for a kicker. And I've done this quite a few times in tournaments. Just have it setting by me. I haven't thrown it all day. I see that gizzard shad or I see that bass porpoising on a gizzard shad, pick that up and throw it. And next thing you know, the bass is jumping again and he's got your swim bait in his mouth. Or that spook bite that you haven't had in weeks, bam, 4 or 5 pounders. So try that, guys. Make sure you have something to imitate a gizzard shad as we get in these later months. Always a great way to catch a big bass. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the water.